I'm Marie Mays. I'm the director of the Center for Entrepreneurial Studies in the Carson College of Business, and we are the sponsors of the business plan competition and these resource nights as well, with support from the Department of Management, Information Systems, and Entrepreneurship. And Ken Butterfield is the chair of that department. He couldn't be here tonight. So a couple reminders about the business plan competition, and I've been logging on to our competition software site to check to see how many of you have registered. So lots of you still need to go on and register your team, and you have until March 12th to do that. So please do that as soon as you can so that we have a good idea of how many judges that will need to run that initial screening round. So and again, remember, you can still edit those, change those right up until the 12th if you want to go ahead and submit it and then not finalize it. I can see what the status of it is as it goes through the process. So, and then March 26th, after you get back from spring break, we give you spring break off this year, and a week after spring break to finalize those 4 to 5 page executive summaries and get those submitted to us. And then we'll turn those around in a week and get back to you about the top teams that are competing in the presentation round. So we're excited about that. If you have questions about how to format that executive summary, there are rubrics and checklists on the business plan competition site. The other thing to note, if you're new to tonight's resource night, and I just see a few new faces, the previous night's videos, the first couple are up on the website, so you can watch those, and the rest of them will be loaded up really soon onto the website. So, and you can actually go back and watch last year's as well. So there's an archived site that has videos from last year, if that's a help for you as you prepare your executive summary for the competition. So, does anybody have any questions? We're kind of a little more informal tonight on our last night, so I'm willing to take questions. If you have any, stop me after. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about the competition or what you need to do. So, I want to go ahead and introduce our speaker for tonight. So some of you have heard Dan. Dan Castles is our speaker tonight, and he was the keynote speaker for last year's business plan competition, those of you who competed last year. And we're delighted he was going to be on campus today speaking to another class. And so I convinced him to speak to our resource night and to change our topic just a little bit. So we're excited to have him here on campus. It's really a treat to have him up from California to be here. So Dan is the CEO of Telestream, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that, but I'll give you a little bit of background about Dan. Dan grew up in Northwest Washington, and he is a grad of WSU just a few years back with a degree in business administration and a minor in economics. So he comes from the business side, but he works in technology, and he works with lots of engineers. So he can tell you a little bit about that and how that works. So he moved to Portland, and he worked as a financial analyst. So he started out in the financial sector working for Tektronix, who at that time they employed 25,000 people, and they were Oregon's largest private employer. So while he was at his first job, he got his MBA from University of Portland and held a variety of financial positions that led to general management positions in what was called the television division. So he went on to have a number of different other positions, and then he became the president of the Grass Valley Group, which had 1,200 employees, and held this position until the mid-1996. In 97, along with 2 other founders, Dan hit the venture financing trail to raise money for a new company, and on February 25th, 1998, Telestream opened their doors. And he can tell you a little bit more about that tonight, and those of you who got to hear his story last year, it's a great story about perseverance in terms of raising venture capital for a firm. So that didn't happen after the first time he pitched his venture. So those of you who haven't heard that, I will get him to tell you a little bit about that tonight. So between their inception, May 2001, Telestream raised $19.3 million. They have experienced 16 years of healthy sales and income growth, made 4 acquisitions over the past 6 years, including their largest competitor approximately 3 years ago. Today, they employ 225 people and design and manufacture a wide range of products for people from consumers to high-end broadcasters who have to deal with the endless issue of incompatibility between video and audio formats and standards as well as computer platforms. In 2012, Northern California's Technology Association recognized Dan as Executive of the Year. In early 2012, Telestream was acquired by Thoma Bravo, a leading private equity firm out of San Francisco, for over $100 million, and Dan was retained as CEO. Over the past 3 years, Telestream has continued to grow aggressively, and in January 2015, just the other day, Telestream was acquired by another private equity firm, Genstar Capital, also located in San Francisco, for approximately $300 million. This valuation resulted in a 70+% annual rate of return to Thoma Bravo, the previous investor. That's a pretty good rate of return. So and you would have been happy to have been that investor on that deal. So following this transaction, Dan continues as the CEO, and Telestream celebrated their 17th anniversary 2 weeks ago. So those are some pretty impressive entrepreneurial credentials. So he certainly has lots of expertise to share with us today. So Dan lives in Grass Valley with his wife, Joanne, also a Coug. So it's always good when Cougs marry Cougs. I can attest to that, right? I'm a Coug married to a Coug. And their 2 daughters, Mallory, who graduated 2 years ago and has a full-time job. He has exclamation point after that. As the parent of a child that age, I can appreciate that. And Miranda, who is finishing her senior year here at WSU. So not only is he a Coug married to a Coug, but he's the parent of a Coug. So he's a Cougar all around. Dan has served on WSU's College of Business Board of Advisors in the past, and he's active as a member of our Entrepreneurship Advisory Board. So join me in welcoming Dan Castles.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thanks for allowing me to come in and kind of invade your space tonight. I'm going to, blather a bit, go over some things that I think are really important to you about a company and kind of what we went through, talk about culture in some detail, but I'm going to take questions, and you got to have questions. And this trio right here understands that if you don't come up with some, I'm going to start picking on them. So, give them a break and come up with some questions as I go through this. But I do want questions. So one of the things I wanted to mention, because I'm talking about culture tonight, and many times in a startup you think about the idea and financing, and when I look at what we've accomplished in our 17 years, and you look at the history from the first 11 people who joined when all we had was an idea and some money, and to what we are today, the thing I'm most proud of is our culture, by far and away. Most proud of. And so I'm going to talk about that some tonight. But just since Marie mentioned it, and I'll have to relive the horrors, when you start a company up, it's tough. And we succeeded in raising money because we were only told no 28 out of 30 times. So we got 2 out of 30. And so when you go through the odds, this is back in the late 90s when we were up and down. There's a road in Palo Alto called Sand Hill Road. And that's where there are there's billions of dollars. And there's an Italian restaurant at the bottom of that hill, and that's where we'd meet afterwards going, what is the matter with us? Because it is so hard. But we got Intel to say yes. We got a small venture firm out of Portland, and we got a small venture firm out of Sacramento. And Sand Hill Road was too big. They wanted to write checks for $10 million, and they wanted to know how many of their colleagues in other companies would write a check for $10 million. And we didn't have that size of vision. So we realized we were fishing in the wrong pond, frankly, after about 25 meetings. And then, everyone has a story. And so our story was that we, of the 11 original people, 10 were working, and I had left Grass Valley Group, my employer, to really focus on doing a startup. So I was the one person who, if you will, wasn't employed. I'll say I was working for free because I was raising all this money, or trying to. So Shaw Venture Partners in Portland ended up being our lead investor. And again, nothing was easy. So he put us through about an inch-thick book over 5 months worth of diligence, and it was our first time through. You couldn't imagine. Does that fellow want to come in the back, or he's peering in the door? Yeah, is it? He was just there. Sorry. So, just to make him feel on the spot, yeah. And so we went through this diligence. And there was an engineer from MIT by the name of Reza Morazami, and he was the one heading the diligence. And it was never ending. It was never ending. And so one day after 5 months, it was 5 o'clock on a Friday, he said, "You know what, Dan, we are done with the diligence." I said, "Oh, thank goodness." And I said, "So what's the process?" He said, "Well, on Monday, I meet with Ralph Shaw, who is a Shaw Venture Partner, so he was the guy, and I meet with him at 10 a.m. And I am going to recommend that they fund you the $5 million you need to start the company." I said, "Oh, that's great." And I said, "So when should I hear from you?" He said, "Well, you'll hear from me around noon on Monday." I said, "All right." So the 10 people that are in their real day jobs are being paid for, I'm keeping them all abreast of what's happening. Monday's a big day, big day. So stay tuned. We met over the weekend. They all, because 5 of them work for the same company, they all worked on the letters of resignation. I mean, we got that specific because how are we going to coordinate this? Because Monday's the day. So you get up Monday morning, and I told my wife, this is after 5 months it's going to happen. So 10 o'clock, you're going, okay, I hope Riza's doing all right, and 11 and 12. And so now I'm going to hang around the house because I'm going to get the phone call. And so noon, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, nothing. So I thought, okay, at what point do you make that tough call to them to find out why I didn't get the call from them? So I called around 5:30, and I said, is Riza there? Well, who's calling? I said, with Dan Castles. I need you to call. I need you to talk with Ralph Shaw. So Ralph gets in the phone, and I said, Ralph, I really hate to bug you, but I'm just, here's where we were, and I just want to find out kind of where are we today? He said, well, I need you to know that over the weekend, Riza and I parted company. I said, what do you mean we parted company? Well, we just had a difference of opinion on some things, and so he's gone. And so there wasn't a meeting that morning at 10. And I said, he said, so I apologize for what this means to you. But the good news is I've assigned Bill Newsom, a new guy we just hired, to your project. And I said, well, so what level of transfer of diligence knowledge should I assume happened here? He goes, zero. And so I had to call my other 10 people, and they were so excited, so excited. And they knew I was going to give them the good news. I said, nah, we're back to square one. Maybe not square one half anyway, or 1.5. And so we had to go through. It wasn't as bad. It wasn't 5 more months, but it was 3. Answering same questions and going through everything. And that's just because our vision fit more their size of investment, and we really didn't have other choices. So we got the company going. That's all in the past, but it's important to note that you learn how to deal with no's. And anyone trying to do a startup, if you think you're going to be told yes more than you're told no, you're crazy. You are crazy. So that's how we got things going. Now, what I'll also tell you is that when you go through, we've now had actually 17 years of consecutive revenue growth and income growth. And in this technology day and age, there are a lot of feast and famine, boom or bust companies, and we are not one of them. We're all about sustaining, our level of growth. Whatever it is we're doing, at whatever pace we're running, we're going to sustain that. But when you look at the deals we've done, and when you look at, we've acquired companies, we've been acquired. And just, last month we were acquired for a big number. And so what's been good about this is that of our, there are 3 founders, and my CTO and my VP of engineering and myself founded the company 17 years ago. They're still in those positions with me, or with us, if you will. Of the 10 kind of, I don't like the word executive, but the 10 top managers, 8 have been there 15 years or more. We have a new CFO because we didn't have a CFO, and we have a new VP of marketing because we didn't have one. So the 2 that haven't been there that long have been 2 positions added in the last 3 years. So the management, I'll say continuity, the commitment to the people, the commitment to the vision, the commitment to the culture and the strategy has been part of our success. So when people went through this diligence, one of the questions that they asked, which is really tough, and I wish I had a better answer, was they found out all of our competitors lose money. All of them. We don't. We make a lot. So their question was, why do you make a lot and the others don't? And so I'm going to talk about that some, because the way you can answer that and the way you shouldn't answer that. And we struggled some to answer that. Okay, what is it about? Well, I don't really understand. I don't really know for sure, because there are plenty of smart people around, but it deals with culture. So I'm just kind of setting up the discussion for tonight, because that's my environment and how we attract people and keep people. There's still more people at that back door. Sorry. Is it kind of, if you aren't here in time, we lock you out? Is it kind of what's happened? It's good to have a doorman, too. Hello. Don't feel awkward. So one of the things I wanted to do when we started, though, and this also deals with the character of the company and the character of the leader. How many of you know how to play blackjack? Okay. So one of the things, so I love playing blackjack. Within reason. But one of the things I like about it is there's a set of rules. And if you play blackjack long enough, you are going to lose, because that's how they have the big buildings in Las Vegas or Reno, wherever you're playing, because it's stacked against you. But if you have a certain rule set, you can actually, in little spurts, do okay. Okay, and there's still way too much luck involved. But the fact is that you have to have this set of rules. So if for those of you who don't know how to play, that if the dealer has a 6 up and you have 12 or more, should you hold or take a hit? Hold. You just know you never take a hit. You just cannot take a hit. And if you do, if there are players at the table who know how to play, they will get angry with you. Seriously. And I learned because I did take a hit one time, and I didn't really. I viewed every hand as its own thing. Every hand is its own. He has a 6. How am I feeling? I got 14. Okay, 7, 8, 7. I think you cannot. So what happens if you play right is that in blackjack there are so many hands, and 95% of the time you have no decision to make, because you just know if he has X and you have Y, you do Z. That's just how it is. That's how it is. And there's 10% of time where you need to have to kind of make a decision here on what to do. You got 12, he's got a 2. How you feeling? You know, he has a 10 showing, you got 11, you double down. Okay? You can make those decisions, but the rest of it, you just play. So I remember I was playing with a friend of mine one time. He said, you just sit there, because I love playing because I can put my mind in neutral, because it's just And he was viewing every hand as its own circumstance. And I said, you don't really know how to play then. And it's too stressful to sit these counting and go, okay, what are the odds of a 7 or no? You just have to have this set. And I look at that as part of the character of a company, is you have to have that same conviction about if this, then that, and this is what we do, and not treat each case individually. Okay? And one of the things, and this will be for those of you who had to suffer through me yesterday and will be suffering through me tomorrow, when I'm talking about character, is this is something we look for in employees, is who do we think has that system down of blackjack for them? And so my poor daughters that are 21 and 24, they heard this, I think it was probably 5 years ago. My older one came home from here, and they were doing something with friends at home, and there was, in phone calls, and somebody was somewhere, and they were too drunk to drive, and you're the parent going, oh, God, I love this. And anyway, they got these people, because our house was a safe house, and I got these kids sitting there. So I got out this deck of cards, and I started who knew how to play blackjack, and they all felt they did. I'm just almost yelling at them to, are you going to take a card or not? And they, oh, let me think about it. Let me think. You cannot think. So you're at a party, who knows what you're doing. And as a person and for your character, you got to know drugs, alcohol, drive, not, relational things, intimacy questions, a whole bunch of things like that. And you got to have your set of rules. And you cannot treat each time you're out, just like you can't in a company, as, okay, this is going on, what do I do? You either know or you don't. And I'll tell you, if you know, life is so much easier than each time there's a decision point, I don't know what to do. I got to think about it. Okay, now I'm here. I don't know what to do. Another person at the door. So thank you for opening the door. And so that was one of the things that I remember, and I'm going sideways here a little bit, but just to let all of you know that in a good interview, companies will tell if you have a decision tree. Okay? It's so important that you know. And so I'm being a little bit of a parent here to all of you, but I just know that for the kids that I'm around your type all the time right now. And so spring breaks next week, and we're off to Hawaii with 4 of you. And so I'm taking it. Okay. So where are you guys? What are you doing? And do you have your rules down? Because I don't want to worry about it. And they make good decisions. But part of it is from beating that into them, that you got to have your rule set. The dealer has a 6. What are you going to do? Are you going to give in to peer pressure or not? What are you going to do? And it's so healthy as a company when you can take that personal set and decide for yourself as a company how you're going to do things. And it makes your job as a CEO so much easier because you just know. I don't have to decide. It's just how we do it. I'm going to go through some cultural things in a second in a little more detail than some people had to hear. How many had to listen to this yesterday? Part of it. I'll just say, I'm sorry. No, I'll go through. But I will touch on some things tomorrow that'll be different. But it's just a real important part of the culture. And related to that, I will also say that one of the things that we also struggle with sometimes is as a CEO, and one of the things that in this diligence of this firm that bought us last month, they said, and I don't mean this way, I don't mean this at all the way it's going to sound, but they said that one of the things that they liked about the company and was our integrity. I said, so what do you mean by the integrity? And they said, and it was in. So I'm going to pass on this explanation, and it's a little. It makes sense, but it doesn't mean it's a hard and fast thing. But they said you take morality, and you take what were they calling ethics, and you combine the two, and those equal integrity. And they said some people, I'm going to use a really terrible example, but you can morally know right or wrong. It doesn't mean you do it. None of us are perfect. So I know what I should do, and so then there are the ethics of it. And so some people are they can be very judgmental, very high horse. But if you knew them personally, they actually don't live by the same guidelines. I mean, ethically, they may know what they should do, but it's situational. Again, they don't know what to do when the dealer has a 5 showing. And that's what equals integrity or character. And a definition that I heard a couple weeks ago I wanted to share with you is character is what you do when no one's looking. Okay? It's not what you do when there's a photographer. It's not what you do when you're trying to impress someone. It's not what you do when a parent's around you. It's what you do when no one's looking. And that's so important for a CEO. If you're out to get publicity or you're out to kind of play to the audience, your employees will know that. I'm just setting up the discussion on culture. And my example, and this is a terrible example, but it's one that, well, it kind of supports it, kind of. You'd say, this is really bad, but anyway, how many, you don't have to raise your hands, but it'd be like, it's suggested that when you use the restroom, you should wash your hands when you leave. Most people say, yeah. And they've done studies that will show you that if there's a person in there with you, there's a much better likelihood that you're going to wash your hands than if you go in there and there's not a soul. And you just, whatever, I'll go. Because it isn't a conviction. It's not something, I know I probably should, but I'm in a hurry. There I go. I'm not comparing this to washing your hands in a restroom, but the point is from a character point of view, when you're starting your own company, you're a CEO, a lot of things have to be decided in a complete vacuum, and you have to know what is right or wrong, and you can't let external factors enter into your decision about who's going to think what about me or what's going to play best to some other audience. You have to make the right decision for the company, okay? So character matters, and the integrity is what really wraps its arms around culture, which I'm going to talk about now. So I'm going to go through some examples, and I'm going to go through these in a little more depth than I did for the class yesterday. But what this is a year ago, it was our 16th anniversary. And some people think every year we should be doing something, I don't know, special to recognize it, and it falls on me, and I'm just busy, and I travel a lot, and nothing was going to happen. And every Friday, we have a 10:30 conference or a company meeting. I go through everything. People ask questions, and we have a product called a Wirecast where we shoot it live around the world to employees worldwide. So it's at 10:30 whether I have anything to say or not. So, okay, it's 16th anniversary. Got to think of something. I know. And I wanted to talk about our culture. And so I actually hand wrote some things down that I felt mattered. And just handwritten, just some talking points. And so went through our results of the week and questions. And I said, well, there's something I want to share with you. And I went through them. And so it was, a lot of them now can watch live from their desktop, and so you aren't there in person, but it's like a group this size of employees, and I'm reading these things through, and I'm explaining them, and I see these heads go, I'm going, well, that's interesting. It's better than this, than that. And so afterwards, at the end, one employee said, can you email us that? And I said, well, it's just handwritten scratches that I'm too embarrassed. Well, can you just scan a copy? And I said, no, I can't. This is just handwritten. And so I typed it up real fast and emailed it out. Then what I noticed was, somebody would come in, they want to tour a Telestream, so I'm walking them around, and as I'm walking around, I would see different versions of that all over. That people, there wasn't one, it had the same words, but they'd prettied it up. It was called company values, company rules, the Telestream way, whatever, but it started to pop up all over. And so for me, it was just an indication that I hit a nerve, and that people from that company integrity point of view, they took a lot of pride in what these are. And I'm going to go through them because for me, it really reflects some things that you might think, makes sense. Anybody should know that. But when I had to answer the question, why have we made money consistently over the years when our competition never has? And they've burned through, we have competition has burned through 70 million in venture money to go again. We've raised 19.3. This is the best I can come up with as to why we are different, special, maybe too strong a word. So let me share these in no particular order, but I'll mention it and then I'll give you an example for each one. Company first, always. Okay. If any employee ever puts a personal agenda ahead of the company's, they will lose every time 100%. 100%. It's just a fact. Respect. You earn it by what you do, not by what your title is. Huge, huge. You know, we would have people from the East Coast that use in the class, their MBAs, they got the title from Harvard, from wherever, and they're upwardly mobile. They need to see the career progression. They wear those aspirations, I call it, on their sleeve, and people don't like to see that. They don't like to see that. If you're worthy of it, it will happen to you at Telestream, okay? So it doesn't really matter what you're called. If people don't think you're worthy of it, they aren't going to respect you. They aren't going to respect you. So we don't allow it to happen. People get promoted all the time. It's because they earned it versus them pushing their manager saying, I really should be called whatever. That won't work. And if you do that, you're violating the first rule, which is company first. Third one, opportunity. Finds those who do the right things with the right attitude. So you don't set out to be promoted. You do the right thing. You do your job. You do your best. We're not perfect at Telestream, but that attitude is everything. It is everything. And one of the things that I keep by me, and I meant to bring it with me and I didn't, but there's a saying that was in a church, and some of you may know what it was, but it's like 500 years ago. It's kind of an inspirational saying, but it talks about life is 90% how you respond when something happens to you. Okay, because life is full of that, and you're all going to go through ups and downs. But it's what do you do when something out of the ordinary, good or bad, happens to you? Are you humble? You know, do you do it with grace? Can you handle negativity? What do you do when something negative happens to a coworker? Are you there to support them? You know, or do you just kind of ignore them and that's their problem? Okay, so that's really what that dealt with. Fail. Don't be afraid to. At Telestream, a lot of what we do things for the ABCs, NBC, CBS, Fox, ESPN, Showtime, HBO, Discovery, National Geographic, any of the kingpins of content anywhere in the world. So those companies in the U.S. and those like them throughout the world use our products. So video today, and this is just a sideways step in what we do, because everyone has a smartphone, everyone's a potential reporter. Okay, so people right now, if you're CNN, you get content all the time from people from their phone. So between smartphones, how we want to view it. So first, you have a lot more people inputting video to people. You have a lot of other people who want to watch it. I want to watch it on my home TV. I want to watch it on my home computer. I want to watch it on my tablet. I want to watch it on my iPhone. And I want to see it wherever I am in the world. Maybe in my home, maybe not. And I want to see it as soon after whatever it is happened. So sadly, one of the things that's happened in our business is quality's gone down and immediacy has gone up. So CNN will publish something they pulled off of YouTube. If it's actually during the tsunami, you have someone who is in there shooting this footage. And the thing which is, it's generational, is that you live through a crisis. The first thing you do is upload your content to YouTube. Once you know you survived, I guess that's what you do. And these news agencies will now, they will sit there minutes after something happened, searching through YouTube to say, okay, who's got what, because they don't, at home, we want to see crummy video that's really fresh versus a well-produced piece of material on the tsunami in Japan the next day, and they flew in a crew. That's just how we are. So those all have format compatibility issues. They aren't seamless, and from different manufacturers, different standards, it's a problem. We solve that. Okay. We also do it on the consumer end. If anyone's heard of Flip for Mac, that is us. And if you're using a Mac and you try to play Windows Media, you have a problem. And other formats. And so we make all that work. Okay. So that's kind of what we do. But it's leading edge stuff. So if we said, and some companies do, we're risk takers. Okay. But if you ask to see someone who's taken a risk and failed, they left the company 3 months ago. Oh, I see. So you're risk takers so long as it works, but are you risk takers if it doesn't? Okay. People will try one time, then they'll stop trying. Okay, team. We value humility, not superstars or prima donnas. And I have had the privilege of working with some of the biggest prima donnas there are. They're brilliant engineers. They're brilliant. But unfortunately, they know it. And they've spent, I think as individuals, we have only, if each of us have like 100 chips to put in buckets called our personality and our aptitude, the brilliant engineers put like 90 into the technology side. They only have 10 other chips to work on personality, being nice, things like that. And they're tough, and you know who they are. And part of my opportunity when I was working at Tektronix was I could get along with those people. I could get along with them, and I could get the best out of them and not have them drive other people nuts. My wife told me they partially drove me nuts along the way, but you didn't want to show them that. But you got to appreciate the depth of their capabilities and really be frustrated by their blindness to ineffective ways that they chose to communicate. So, so we're all about team. All about team. Can do, it's our attitude. Be real, help others. You may need their help someday too. And my point there is that, again, when you're young, you may not realize this, but as you get a little bit older, there's a saying that at any one time, 10% of your employees of your company are in a crisis mode of life. Divorce, financial issues, health issues, just relational issues in general. It happens. It just happens. And so what's important at a company is that what we ask at Telestream is that every day you bring the best game you got to the table. But we understand that some days it's not a great game, but it's the best you're capable of. And you know what? We're going to help stick with you through that season of your life, and we're going to count on other people because team matters to pull you through. But you know what? You'll be that lead goose of that V of the Canadian, geese flying. You'll be back in the front of that V. But you can't be there all the time. And I've also learned that through, peaks and valleys where you have a team of 8 young people and there's some person with a family, and you know what? He had a bad night last night with a newborn. But that team didn't understand, and he's not willing to spend the all night there. He's not willing to do whatever. And you're going, okay, you guys aren't understanding. It takes all types. And so that's something that's very important, is that a good company will stick by their employees, and they'll know, when am I getting the best that employee has, when it isn't always going to be at the same level. Long run, be able to sustain whatever it is you do. We aren't a one-hit wonder, a one and done. That's not us. Okay, 17 years of consistent growth. That's what we do. And the people who bought us expect year 18, 19, 20, 20. They expect it's like a 5-year investment horizon. They want 5 more years. Not, we're out of breath. We're just out of breath. So I need to take a year off or something. That's not what that's not what we represented to them. Is we will do what we're doing day in, day out. Spending. We don't do it ahead of the revenue curve. We don't believe in hype. We are real careful about marketing dollars. We've seen many companies in the Bay Area who get the millions of dollars. They spend a lot of money pre-release of a product. They spend millions of dollars, and then guess what? The product either gets delayed or they launch it and it just didn't hit the mark the way they thought, and they spent all this money. And that money, when you raise it, you're giving up ownership in your company, right? No one's going to give you money for nothing. So you have to dilute your company and your ownership even more to raise some more money, because the money that you spent didn't produce any results. So we don't do that. Solution, be part of it. Don't complain. And our thing is, nothing's perfect. But if there's something that frustrates you, try to think about some potential solutions to present in addition to the problem versus, here's the problem. Your management, take care of it. We'll just say, that isn't even a conversation that we're going to have, because you didn't bother to. Anybody can complain. Anybody can complain. But if you're close enough to it to be frustrated, I bet you might have some insights that we'd love to hear about how to solve it. And it turns it into a positive, thing of involvement versus I'm not empowered. I have no say. I'm a victim, and we don't want victims at Telestream either. Do the right thing for the customer and the company. Our employees know that we have their backs always, always. So we will always do the right thing by an employee. If there's a situation financially or with benefits, or if they're in a pinch in life, we always protect them. But it's with our customers, same way. When you're working with discovery and they've got something with deadliest catch for those who ever watched. You know, I mean, you have to. In technology, things never work perfectly. So how you take care of the customer. And we'd never say, well, you paid me for this already. Yeah, you know, I don't really have to help you. For what we do, we sit in the middle of a lot of really complicated workflows, and sometimes it's not clear whose fault it really is, I mean, in terms of what company. But we'd never say, we know it's not us, you need to go talk to these 3 companies, it's not us. We would never do that. Hard. You know, what we do is really hard. We recognize that, and we do what a few others can do. It doesn't mean it isn't chaotic at times. We get that some days you can be just going nuts with what you have to do because we're in such a changing environment. It can change every day. And some days what people come to work to do, when they go home at night, they didn't touch it because a phone rang, customer, something happened. You have to understand that, what we do and why we make so much money at it. And people made so much money with these deals for Telestream. Employees have made a lot of money. What we do is hard. And the last one is care. We care about our employees and our community. We expect you to do the same. So our philosophy there is that on the long haul, certainly, there are times when this isn't true, but normally we expect employees to spend more time outside our building than in it, right? Because of 24 hours in a day, they shouldn't be in the building 13 hours. So day in, day out. So it's just being human. What's going on outside that building comes in the building. And so what's happening with kids in schools, what's happening with certain healthcare decisions, what's happening with certain community support things, it matters. And in our community, we're the most philanthropic company there. There isn't a Boeing, there isn't some big firm where we are. So our employees are involved. They give, we give, they participate on most of them, on homeless councils, on school boards, on whatever it is, because those things will impact your employees when they come in the door. And so those are some things we went through as our culture that when I look back and when I got this question, you know, people said during the diligence, well, you know, you've been the founding CEO, so it's very, very rare you're even still around. You know, so we go through these deals and it'd be very realistic for them to tap me on the shoulder and say, we want to buy the company, but with where we see the company needing to go, you kind of don't fit into those plans. So, and I do realize that 17 years is a long time. But they'll say, so what are you most proud of? And it is the culture. It is the epicenter of everything we do. So I would much rather take a mediocre idea and execute the heck out of it with great people than a brilliant idea poorly executed by some people who thought they were really, really smart. So what we leave with is that at any point in time, when we're talking to investors, we're talking to customers, we're talking to employees, and this is part of the one about humility, is that my assumption is twofold. Number one, there is always somebody in the room smarter than me. Always. And you could easily take, no, there isn't. No, I think I looked around this room and you're not so sharp. I think I look pretty good. No, there's always someone in the room smarter than me. But no one's going to outwork me. No one. Now, it doesn't mean I'm a 20-hour a week and that, you know, I have had balance in my life. My daughters would tell you that I coached teams. I was at all their sporting things. I maybe sometimes had to do weird flight things. I would travel to be there. But it doesn't mean you aren't balanced. But it just means you will put in the effort and people will put in the effort. And our culture is, and this is going to sound weird, it's a more rural area. But I will say almost every weekend when I'm in town, I am in there on a Saturday or a Sunday as part of running around because I want to feel the energy because stuff's happening, because others are doing the same thing. And it's not stealing from my weekend. I might have just played a basketball game or played some squash. I'm all sweaty. I'm only a mile away. I'm going to go in there and see what's going on. Every weekend. But I'm not in there for hours or anything, but that's what's happening is we're kind of a 7-day a week where people love what we do and how we do it. And so you're not asking them or requiring them to be in. They are because they want to be. And I could wrap that around, you know, an idea any day and win where some of my competition that may have sharper people, they don't have a culture, fail. Okay? So that's where I wanted to talk about the culture. I want to take some questions from you guys on anything in general, because you can also go, which we talk about to the class tomorrow about applying for jobs and certain things that we look for. So If you want to know kind of how do we figure out what your character is, there are certain questions we ask. I won't tell you what they are. You may have to ask me. So, yes, question in the back. Here it is. Start it off.
When you are interviewing someone, how can you tell whether they're going to fit into your culture?
Great question. How can you tell? Okay. We have, if it's an engineer, they actually take a test. It's a technical test that they have to take that we believe if they're, and it's been a good barometer. We started about 2 years ago. And for engineers who do really well, they've done well on the test. For engineers that have struggled, they kind of struggled at the test. We feel like it's grown into something pretty practical. And what we're looking for there, and this isn't the primary answer to your question, but what we're looking for there is how do you think? How do you think? So there are different ways. It's not like the answer is 4. It's what do you think the answer is and how do you get there? When you're in, like I was a business major, okay, and many of you are, it's not the same thing. You can't give someone a test because you're a business major and it's a little bit different. So a lot of my job would be, and keep in mind when many of you, and how many of you in here are business majors? So a lot. So you have to realize that any employer that you want to work for understands you don't know specifically what it is they need you to do in the job they're interviewing for, right? I mean, you come out of here with some skills, but you can't say, I know everything about this because I'm 22 or 23 or 24, I've got my degree, and you're going to train me. You're going to train me. So I have to figure out if you're trainable. I have to figure out if you're trainable, and I have to figure out if you have the character. So my role in an interview, and there are lots of positions I don't interview people for, but for the ones I do, I will ask you, I will say, okay, we hire you, and a year from now, we talk to those who work closest with you. How are they going to describe you and their experience with you? That isn't, he's just one sharp guy, but what are they going to say? And if the person says something like, I'm a fun guy, okay, fun, I'm not quite sure I know what that means. If they say, and this is something you really want to be able to say, so I'm not trying to load your answer, but if they're humble and say that I was the first to, I think they tell you that I know what I know and I don't know what I don't know, and I'm really trainable. I learn easily. I fit into a team really well. I take direction. And you know what? I think they'd find me that they enjoyed working with me. If you asked people in a year if I was here. So what you said was, I'm not coming as the expert, so humble matters, you guys. Humble matters versus, you know what? I mean, I'm really confident in all that I know, and I think they'd say that and I've had this happen before. I'd say if you talk to someone who worked with me in a year, they'd probably say, this guy should be promoted. Or you're going, and this is, but they say it in a, but he promoted, knows a lot more than, any college kid we ever, it's all about themselves. And so that's one question. I will ask you, usually in these interviews, I have like 30 minutes, so I don't have time to get to know you. Tell me, tell me three adjectives to describe yourself. 3 things. And one shouldn't be, I'm a fun guy. It's just don't use the word fun when you're 22 years old. That means too many things to old ghosts like me that aren't good. But describe yourself, okay? I'm going to ask you, tell me something up to this point in your life you're really proud of. Tell me something in your life. I don't ever want to use the word failure because none of you are old enough to have failed. If you want to use the word failed, things may not have worked out the way you hoped at that particular segment. What was something that didn't work out? What was it? Describe it, and describe what you learned from it, and how has it impacted you. I'll ask if you could be really good at something that today you don't think you're really good at, what would it be? That could be a subject. That could be a whole bunch of things. But those are all little things that I will ask you, and believe it or not, and when you do it long enough, I bet I have a 90% batting average or better on getting quality people. Quality people, I'd say, you know what? I want to work with that person. I want to work with them. And oftentimes a person's value really surfaces when maybe things didn't work out that well. And what do you do? What did you do? Versus when things are great, and this is, sports analogies, I got them to the cows come home. Anyone can be a good sport when your team's winning by 40 points. Anyone can be. But what happens when the game is on the line, or what happens when your team just lost, or just lost to a team they probably shouldn't have lost to? How do you act? How do you act? And so those are all things that are really important. And I can talk. If I know a person has played sports, I'll poke at that. Tell me about a great moment in your sporting career. Tell me a low point. And their low point could be something specifically about them versus the team. You know, and you're going, interesting, your high point was when you scored 35 points. Your low point was when, you know, okay, I'm not sure you're a team player. And so those things have been really helpful for me from ways that you don't really recognize. Yes?
So you talk about trainability.
Mm-hmm.
Find that you can never train people to fit into your culture. Like, you, if their characteristics work, like, two of them you're unsure about, but you bring them on anyways.
Sure. Okay, gotcha. When we look to bring people on, do we find that we can train them into our culture if, in fact, we're kind of interviewing and you can't, it's never black and white, you can tell for sure they fit in. Marginally. And usually when we go to hire someone, and it's interesting because if I am uncomfortable making that decision on you, and we have like 4 other people, and they've all taken different, like you're focused on their technical abilities, you're focused on marketing, you're focused on whatever. Almost always, if I'm uncomfortable with something, the others are as well from their own kind of functional angle. Almost never would I be going, I have some issues with this person. And they're going, whoa, we didn't pick up that vibe at all. We think they're great. So we normally, to a degree, it can be as definitive as it kind of is. If we have concerns about a person, we really don't want to, you don't train teamwork. So if I know you aren't a team player, yeah, I'm sure you could learn, but that's a real basic thing. And there are plenty of people who are team players. So I really am not incented to want to take someone who isn't and try to make him one versus hire someone who is. Yes?
So when you're just starting up and you have 5, maybe 10 employees, and you need those spots to be filled just so you can stay profitable and not go negative, you really don't have much of a choice for who to hire. So how would you go about filling that position?
Well, so if I have, we're smaller and limited cash, and we have maybe 5 slots to fill or so, you're saying, how do I fill those slots?
Right.
Well, I'm going to be very picky even if I have 1 to fill. And I'm not going to compromise or sacrifice, my principles because I have 1. In fact, I'd argue the fewer people you have, the more important it is. The more important it is because, 2 bad employees out of 10, you're never going to be, and we aren't perfect on our hires, by the way, because part of it is just human nature. But we are, I'd say it's the same. The one difference when you have fewer people is you want more flexible people. You want some people that can wear some different hats. And so the people who've thrived at Telestream aren't ones that were hired 10 years ago to do X, and now they're still doing X, but they're really experienced at X. They're doing Y and Z and back over at A. So when we have, I guess to answer your question, fewer slots when we were smaller, we wanted people who seemed like you could throw them a curve and they'd be okay with that they could take on a different role, not get hung up on their career path per se and deal with because you needed them to cover more space because you had 10 of you to run a company and you couldn't say I don't have anyone in marketing or I don't have anyone in finance. You had to have people who had some skills there.
So would you be willing to take a risk on losing money while trying to hire people?
Okay, so would I take a risk on losing money while trying to? Never. Because if I lose money, well, it depends, I guess. Would I take a risk on losing money to hire people? If I had the capital and I felt that was what I want to do, then yes. But so when you are you get your first investment, we had $5 million, and we had already done the computations. How long that $5 million last us, and when are we going to release our first product? How many are you going to sell? And when you start to have cash coming in the door, if we wanted to lose money, then it means at some point we factor it into our math, or else we're going to have to raise more money. And when you raise the money, you give up ownership. So we did well by one scenario. Well, we got funded, but we did extra well because when we were acquired the first time, we, the employees, owned 30%. It wasn't 90. We raised $19.3 million in 5 rounds, and every round you give up ownership. So we would never want to do that just because we had some personnel issues and we wanted to lose money for a while. That's very, very expensive. That's very expensive to do. Yes. This front table. Yes.
So, you obviously had this really specific vision for the culture within your company, but how is it that you casted vision so successfully and got your employees, people within your company, to really grasp it and to take ownership?
No, good question. So we had a very specific culture when we started the company. How did we get people to grasp it and really endorse it? One of the things that's fair to say, again, this is being humble, a lot of this isn't something, we didn't start with this with the company. It was kind of what we had all worked places beforehand. So the brilliance of this culture was, of all the things you've done, because I've been working for 20 years, so there must have been some things that you didn't like in the companies you worked for. Yep. Well, what were they? Well, this and this and this. Well, if you're doing a new company, don't you want to avoid those? I think so. And so there were some things that we kind of backed into, but it dealt with, like anyone who's worked 20 years, I've worked for some great managers. I've worked for some people I just couldn't stand. I've worked with people that were brilliant and great. I've worked with people who couldn't stand. There are ways you go about business. When you're in a startup mode, and I mentioned this at a group just before this meeting, when you're talking about, your most precious commodity is your capital. And so getting that first product out the door is so critical. So we have 3 things that must be in a discussion when you're talking about your products and engineering. What is the product, the definition? How many engineers, for how long? So if you think we want to do a product that has these key features, it's going to take 15 months and 5 engineers. In the history of technology, never has it worked if you said, we want to do this list, and it's going to be 15 months and you have 2 engineers. I know you wanted 5, but we don't have the financing, so we'll do 2. It will not work. It will not work. So we always have those 3: definition, time frame, resources. And it's really important. And that's part of your culture, is that we want to be realistic. So we're doing projections, and one side point is there are 2 times in our early history where I personally covered payroll because we thought we were going to have an accounts receivable, a payment come in from a customer, and it didn't. And we were playing it. We chose to play it that close to our chest from an equity point of view because we didn't want to dilute and go out and raise more money. And we knew we were so close to getting to their side of the river. But twice I had to do that. So that cash is king. And a delay in a product, it's just... You're out, the 80% of what we spend is on labor. So the people are still there and they expect to get paid. Every 2 weeks they expect to get paid. But you just delayed your money machine 4 months. Yes, that's a killer. And that will happen to you. I mean, anyone who's been in technology, that will happen. But you try your best to avoid that. So that's how we do that. Resources, scope, the definition, and time frame. Yes. Go ahead. How do you keep your culture and your vision adherent to the original founding? So when we raise outside funding, which most people don't have a money tree out back, so your funding will be outside, how do you maintain your culture? The people who invested in us understood the importance of our culture. They would not have invested money in Telestream and said, you know what, we think your culture stinks. So part of the conditions of taking my money is you got to change how you do business. So we made it real visible up front what the culture was, number 1. Number 2, how important that was to how we did business. And these people do their diligence. They call customers. They call competitors. It's amazing what they can find out about you. And so that's one of the things that really surfaced for us, is that they saw how strong that was, and they didn't want to touch it. They just wanted to reinforce it. Yes?
As your company has grown from the original group to where it is today, how have you found your culture has changed?
Sure, great question. As our company has grown from where it started to where it is today, when you have 11 people, we were all on the same page. We were just absolutely on the same page. One of the things that's happened, which has been a great thing, but it's been challenging, is that about 8 years ago, when we got into more of this Mac business, a whole bunch of your type started becoming our employees. And so we had to change. I was telling Marie, we've got some stuff with gaming coming out and I could tell you what the product will do. And right today, it doesn't even make sense to me. And all of you would go, you totally get it. So sometimes when I would give a tour of Telestream, and I said, we have an enterprise business and we have a desktop business. And I'm going to go through and point to each individual, and you, the tour person, the visitor who doesn't know anything about what we do, you will guess right based on the age. And you'll see someone barefoot with their feet up on their chair, doing something. You'll see people out front of the building, hacky sacking, doing something weird. Those are desktop people. And so we brought in, our average age dropped a lot about 8 years ago. In our culture, we had a lot of people who were being employed for the first time. And they may not even know what a culture is, or once they do, care at that point. And you're just the first company they've ever worked for. So I've got to kind of show up on time, or what does time mean? Well, I'll roll in by 9 o'clock, and how they view certain things. One of the things that we really value, and I'll stay off my soapbox here, but just know writing and the ability to write in full sentences, and it's so important. And so with the younger people, we got the texting generation, we got the acronyms, the abbreviations, and the customers they were dealing with were people like me, and they went nuts. And they'd go back and say, if you can't write in a complete sentence and tell me what is wrong, I'm working with the wrong company. And we had to actually hold a class for a lot of our newbies to help them understand that, and this isn't texting, that we had one discovery, we had a prominent discovery network. And there's a senior person who was involved. It was a big issue, and worked through the phone tree. A real young person got involved, and they asked the person's phone number, and they were going to text them a response. And the person just about, you're going to text me a response. I want to talk to a real person over the phone. I don't even want an email. You're not going to text me what I should be doing to fix my problem. And so it's very generational, but for us, there will always be people in that food chain that are older. And so we had to go through it, challenged our culture of how do you do the right thing, and the right thing isn't a bunch of texting, or the right thing isn't ... and words that are, the right thing are sentences. And that was kind of a culture shock for some people who said, well, that's kind of old school, well, those are our customers. So it was, I think, challenged the most by when we brought on a lot of younger people, and we were the first job for them. And they've grown, they've come on. We're hiring this week a cougar. One of the things that I want to commend all of you on, and I've told my daughters this, who came here not because, in fact, they weren't going to come here because Mom and Dad went there. And so the fact they're both here, but this isn't where you go because it's a flashy place. There are other flashier places, and I work with a lot of East Coast Ivy Leaguers. And they're all about the number of schools. When you can get an MBA, you would say, I have an MBA from Washington State University. But at the right institution, you went to business school. And you don't need to say from where. If you have to ask, you don't understand how it works. And that's Harvard. So I have a degree I went to business school. And I'll always say, I did too. I went to University of Portland. You go, business school, there's one. It's Harvard. And so I go, okay. So what I'm proud of is that we have an engineer that we hired 5 years ago from here. I didn't know. I wasn't involved in the interview. Didn't know he was from here. And because we hired a lot of young people then, I went through engineering, and they'd grown a lot. I said, can you rank, of the people hired in this time frame, rank the engineers? And there's this one guy I always heard so much about, and they said, well, you know where he's from, don't you? I said, I have no idea. I mean, I know who he is. I've talked to him, but, he's a cougar, and right on. And this kid we're hiring this week was an MIS major, and he's been on a 2-month internship, and we're hiring him. And if you use the word humility, that is something that I think, I hope, when you go to WSU, we're not the University of Washington, it's WSU. And again, you don't ever assume you're the smartest person in the room. You will outwork people in a productive way. And that's why I come back and speak to students and talk to students or do mentoring to students, because there's a reward for me. Because there is something special. You may not realize it right now, but when I talk to kids from other colleges, there is something special about this place, about the work ethic, teamwork, camaraderie. You're not here because of the great winners. You know, you're not here. There's something that you're learning. You need to respect and just appreciate, because as an employer, we see it. One of the challenges for me right now, and it's okay, but this new firm who bought us, they're great people. But my 2 points of contact are 2 people from business school, one who's 34 and one who's 24. 24-year-old just got out of Harvard Business School, and he doesn't know anything. But you're bred to understand, don't ever say that. You went to business school. You are special, and don't ever forget it. And so I just love running circles around them from Washington State University, you know, and those, I've worked with them for 30 years, and they don't have anything in any of you. They have nothing. Well, they're more broke, but they don't have anything that you don't have here. But and it works against our culture if you walk through the door and I am from Harvard. You know, you go, oh, okay, we're going to have a problem right off the bat. But it's truly, it's part of it. It's part of it. And you don't have that, right? I hope you don't have that. Other questions? Let me know, Marie, when I'm out of time here, too. Okay. Any other questions? Yep. Fire away.
Talk earlier about when you're in an interview and they can tell whether or not you have a decision tree.
Mm-hmm.
Like obviously, like you want to have like your core values and that kind of thing. But how would you go about like developing, like I don't know, like in blackjack you can keep playing until you kind of go with it all the time.
Yeah.
With something like the questions they're asking you in an interview, how do you kind of build a decision tree to kind of make your decisions that quick?
Mm-hmm. No, great question. How do you create a decision tree, kind of, I'll say at your ages, that will hold up in an interview? And so, because that's hard. Lots of different questions. And I'll just, I guess that's a great question, but my answer is you have to have a couple core things. And so I'm just going to say that as you feel your mouth talking, hear your mouth talking, you've got to be humble. If you are saying anything that is self-aggrandizing, anything that is individual over team, anything that I know I'm better at this than many people, just know that whatever track you're on for whatever kind of question you're answering, it's not a good track. And so it's okay to take your time. Sometimes they ask a question and you just start in. And you go, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I said that. And I'll give an example, and I'll come back to a more detailed answer. When I was here, my older brother was 2 years older than I was, and he just retired from a long and great career at Shell Oil, in accounting, in finance, and he worked for one of their joint ventures with a Saudi Arabian company, did very, very well. He was in accounting. And so I was a finance major, and even though the difference between finance and accounting isn't that much, I just hated the little bit that was different. I didn't want to be in accounting. So he was in Houston, and he started there in August. And in September, Shell came to WSU to interview for accountants. So I said, okay, not on a very humble track, I'm going to interview and get a free trip to Houston to see my brother. I wasn't interested in the job. I just wanted to go see my brother. And somehow I had it in my mind, as a guy not interested in accounting, I should apply for an accounting job. So I have this interview, and normally you have the cattle call, they interview a bunch of people, this is back then, and then like a handful make it an invite to where they'd fly to Houston. Not a problem for me. So I go in there, and the guy had the nerve to ask me, he said, so I see you're a finance major, this is an accounting job. Why did you apply? Well, I don't want to tell you the truth because I just want to get a free ride to see my brother. And he said, well, you must, and I was kind of stumbling, first interview my senior year, September. And he said, well, I mean, what do you think of accounting? I said, well, you know, I'm more of a finance guy for a reason. I really don't care for accounting. And I told him why. And I was so proud of the smoothness of my response. And later that night, my brother called because we were almost making plans for what we do when I visited on my WSU, on my Shell Oil free flight. He said, what kind of questions did they ask? He said, well, they started off with what I thought of accounting. And he said, well, okay, well, how'd you answer that? Well, I told him I didn't like it. And anyway, by the time, the next 5 minutes is, listen, my brother just called me an idiot in every different way possible. Needless to say, I did not get a free flight to Houston, and it was an idiot answer. It was an idiot answer that didn't really reflect what I I just was an idiot, then. And so if you ground yourself in trying to be true yourself, you shouldn't have applied for a job you didn't want. So on one hand, I was true to myself, but you're an idiot, is what I was. But if you really ground yourself in if I want to be perceived as a person of character, and for some of you, you may think, I don't even care if I am. I don't know. I'm hoping you think, I want to be a person of character. I want to have integrity. And then just know as you go to answer the questions that I think that if you can have some kind of trail of breadcrumbs to, at least the two things are, one, am I sounding humble? And number two, am I valuing the team and the people that I work with above myself? And it's a 100% probable thing that they will have to train you for you to be of any value to a company interviewing you. And that's going to take people who want to do it. And we have people at Telestream who, they kind of have to do it. No one's called a trainer. So when they meet a new employee, you'll hear, they go, first day, awful. This guy doesn't want to hear me. He doesn't want to listen to me, or he or she. And so you get that feedback. And so you are going to have to be trained. And so whether you care about the team or individual, you just don't want to come across that way. And frankly, I hope you value the team above the individual, because that makes life a lot more easy in the long haul. One thing, just to comment on that, a sports thing. I had an older daughter who was a volleyball player and didn't want to be recruited, was recruited, but didn't play in college. But when she was a sophomore, and this is a school that played in the state championship in California, Division I, and volleyball really matters in California. And I remember when she was a sophomore, she got to start. And it was my daughter and 5 seniors on the team. And I remember you're going there and I didn't know how to play volleyball, so you're just kind of there as a spectator, but they're playing this big rival, and you're playing best of 3 matches. It's 1 match apiece, and the third match in volleyball is played at 15 points. And my daughter's team was behind 14-13. And actually it's 14-12. They get side out, they're behind 14-13. It's my daughter's turn to serve. Oh, not her strong point. And you go, oh boy. And you're this classic, oh boy. And so she goes up and she has this jump serve and she nails it. And had it been this much higher, but it hit the net. And you might get lucky and it falls over the net and it's a point, but it hit the net, fell on her side, point to their team, match is over. And I remember she did that. And she's always taught, go down swinging. You don't just punch something, you attack. But you didn't get it over. And this would be just like missing a free throw at the end of the game, but you weren't the person who made the game that close. But I watched her, and she served, went in the net. The referee blew his hands. It was on the road, you were visitors, so the home crowd went nuts. And she's sitting there, and she didn't know what to do. And the first 2 people to her side were these 2 seniors who were whacked her in the butt because they wanted her to do the same thing in the same circumstance the next time. And it might just go over. But not to be afraid of taking, which one? Fail. Don't be afraid to. So when I look at that, and you can look at from sports to life, but you just look at how do I want to behave, and I'll just guarantee you from a teamwork point of view, you aren't going to have this career you want or the fulfillment you want going alone and going solo and just thinking you're just better than others. And so I think if I leave you with anything, it's just in an interview on that topic, you just want to come across as I know I have things to learn and I can learn them. And I'm respectful of other people. I know that, especially out of college, everyone you work with is probably going to be older. That's okay. I'm going to be a great team player. They'll like working with me. That sort of thing. That's what you want to have come through somehow in your answers, to have that as a common theme, kind of. One last question, and I better stop here. Or should I have said one last question 1 question ago? Yes, end it all right here.
What's your most memorable moment from WSU?
My most memorable moment from WSU. Okay, let me just pause. I would say my most memorable moment, I'd say 2, sorry. So you should have said, what's your most memorable 2 moments? Isn't that what you meant to say? I think. My most memorable two moments. Nowadays, they'd probably be considered a stalker, but I met my wife fall semester spring semester, my sophomore year in BA 301. And I remember, he's just a guy, and we had to sign up for a project, and I should be focused on what is the project, but I was focused on her, and so there are these different lines to get in, and so I just stood behind her, and whatever she's going to sign up for, I don't even know what it was. I was going to sign up for that, and so that's where I first met her, and then we never dated till after WSU, and so it's been 35 years. But so a memorable moment is I can tell you exactly where I was when I met her. She'll roll her eyes and say that was your most memorable moment. But and then the other one I was going to lead with was that actually when I was recruited to play basketball here, and it was by George Rowling, and I went to way too small of a high school, and so I knew that maybe I wasn't the top person on the list when one day when I was in high school, I got 3 letters from him, all stamped with the same, here's just a form letter, but 3 in one day. So I knew I was perhaps confused on a mailing list somewhere, but I got to come in and meet him, and he asked me the question, how important is it to you to get out of here in 4 years or 5? I said, I want to get out of here in 4. He said, well, I wouldn't play basketball, that's simple. And he asked me for some game tapes, and we were too small I didn't have any. And it was a good decision that I made to not do that. But what I did, and this is my memorable moment, that when I was here, let's see, I got to say this right. There were freshmen, there was a JV team, and there was a game before the varsity. And it was a JVs playing someone. And back, I won't tell you the year, but a long time ago, decades ago, there was a lot of budget issues here. And so the JV team couldn't actually go anywhere. And so if teams wouldn't come here to play them, there wasn't a game. So I was on a really good intramural team. And so before the UCLA game, that's when they were sold out at Frio Court, we were going to play another team. And so my memorable moment was that as we walked down on the court, and back then you had to get there early to get in, so there were thousands of people when we took the court to play, and the team we were supposed to play turned out to be the best of all the 305 teams that were in the intramural program then against my team. And we didn't know that because we didn't ask any questions. And so as soon as we walked on the court, as positive as you want to be, you knew you were going to get killed in front of all your friends. And we did. And so it's a memorable moment of feeling like we were just, we didn't ask the right questions somehow because we were set up, but we were the warm-up act for the varsity that day. But it was just a terrible, terrible day to be on my team. And so that left me, I'm not sure what that says about me. That's one of my memorable moments. But I had a blast here. It was a great 4 years. I feel like I've been prepared for things. My daughters, I believe, are prepared. The people I've seen that have from here that I know and friends, they are prepared. And whether you think you are or not. And I also realize how many of you will leave here in about a month and a half and you don't yet know what you're going to do. And I didn't know what I was going to do. So don't let that do anything to your confidence or any kind of thought you have of your life or options that you may have. And so just embrace it. And I wish you nothing but the best. Just, successful careers to you all. Okay. Thanks. Great questions too, by the way.